You were in a meeting last month and you saw a problem that nobody else was naming. The data did not support the direction the team was heading. The timeline was unrealistic, the assumptions were flawed, and everyone in the room was nodding along as if none of that mattered. So you spoke up. You raised the concern clearly, professionally, with evidence to support it, and the room went quiet. Not the quiet of agreement, the quiet of someone who just broke the script everyone else was following. After the meeting, your manager did not say you were wrong. They said something much worse. They said you need to be more careful about how you raise things in front of leadership. You were right about the problem. You were punished for naming it. There are 5 specific reasons why speaking up in meetings keeps backfiring, and the last one explains why your input was never wanted in the first place. Here is the structural reason speaking up backfires, and it has nothing to do with whether you were right. Most professionals assume that meetings are forums for open discussion where the best idea wins. That is almost never true. Meetings in most organizations are performances of alignment, scripted exercises where the outcome has been largely determined before the meeting starts, and the purpose of the meeting is to create the institutional appearance that the decision was made collaboratively. When you speak up with a genuine concern in a meeting that was designed to perform consensus, you are not contributing to the discussion. You are disrupting the performance. And the institution remembers disruption much longer than it remembers insight. Being right and being effective in a meeting are 2 completely different skills, and the room rewards one while punishing the other. 5 reasons, counting down from 5. Reason number 5, you said the right thing to the wrong audience. The exact same concern raised in 2 different contexts produces 2 completely opposite outcomes. If you raise the timeline concern in a one-on-one with your manager before the meeting, privately without an audience, giving them time to absorb it and decide how to address it, you would be seen as strategically aware and proactively helpful. When you raise the same concern in front of leadership, you are seen as someone who disrupts meetings and creates uncertainty at the wrong moment. The words were identical. The audience was different. And in the institutional context, the audience determines whether your contribution is received as insight or recorded as a problem. This looks like the meeting where you flagged a risk that everyone was ignoring, and instead of being thanked, you were pulled aside afterward and told you need to learn when to raise things and when to hold them. The takeaway, the same sentence said in a one-on-one advances your career. Said in front of leadership, it can end it. The words did not change, the audience did. Reason number 4, you made someone look bad without meaning to. When you raised the concern about the unrealistic timeline, you were not just challenging the timeline. You were challenging the person who set the timeline, and in many cases that person was either in the room or had a relationship with someone who was. Your concern was about the data. The room heard it as an accusation because every challenge to a decision is indirectly a challenge to the person who made it. The institution does not evaluate your concern on its merits. It evaluates the social consequence of your concern, specifically who was embarrassed by it and how much institutional power that person holds. If the person you embarrassed outranks you, the embarrassment becomes your problem regardless of whether your point was valid. This looks like the meeting where you pointed out the flaw in the strategy. And 3 days later, you learned the strategy was designed by the director who has been with the company for 15 years, and your valid concern was received as a junior employee publicly questioning a senior leader's judgment. The takeaway, the room does not remember what you said. It remembers who was embarrassed when you said it. Frame concerns around risk reduction, not around what is wrong, because what is wrong always has a name attached to it. Being right and being effective are 2 completely different skills. The room rewards one and punishes the other. Reason number 3, you were remembered for the challenge, not the content. Here's what happens in the institutional memory after you speak up in a meeting. The specific content of what you said gets forgotten within a week. The timeline concern, the data gap, the risk you identified, none of that stays in the room's collective memory because the room processes dozens of data points per meeting and retains almost none of them. What the room does retain is the emotional imprint of the moment, the disruption, the silence, the uncomfortable pause, and most importantly, how it felt when you said it. Your name does not get attached to the insight. Your name gets attached to the feeling, and the feeling the room remembers is not this person identified an important risk. The feeling is this person made the meeting uncomfortable. This looks like the month after the meeting when a colleague mentioned that the director described you as someone who can be combative in meetings, and you realized the word combative had replaced the valid concern you raised, and the label was now your institutional reputation in rooms you were not in. The takeaway, the room remembers the disruption, not the insight. Your name gets attached to the feeling you created, not the point you made. Once the label is assigned, it outlasts the meeting by months. Reason number 2, you spent your credibility on the wrong battle. Your professional credibility is capital, and like all capital, it is finite. Every time you push back in a meeting, challenge a direction, or raise a concern that creates discomfort, you spend credibility. Some battles are worth the spend: workload decisions that affect your career, credit assignments, role definitions, and strategic directions that materially impact your team. Other battles are not: meeting format disagreements, process preferences, scheduling conflicts, and issues that will resolve themselves without your intervention. The professionals who backfire in meetings are almost never wrong about the substance. They are wrong about the allocation. They spend credibility on every concern with equal intensity, and by the time a career-defining battle arrives, their credibility account is empty because it was drained on fights the room forgot by Friday. This looks like the year you push back on every process inefficiency, every unclear directive, and every meeting that should have been an email, and when the actual career-defining moment arrived where your team structure was being redesigned, the room had already categorized you as someone who pushes back on everything, and your valid concern about the restructure was dismissed as more of the same. The takeaway: credibility is capital. Every time you spend it on a battle that does not materially affect your career, you have less for the one that does. Spend strategically. But none of these reasons compare to reason number one, and this is the one that makes every meeting frustration feel different once you understand it. The meeting was never a discussion. It was a performance of alignment, and you broke the script. Reason number one: the decision was already made before you spoke. Most meetings where decisions appear to be made are not decision-making meetings. They are decision announcement meetings that have been staged to look collaborative. The actual decision was made days or weeks earlier in a one-on-one between your manager and their manager, in a senior leadership conversation, in a budget review that determined the direction before any calendar invite was sent. The meeting exists to perform alignment, to create the institutional record that the team was consulted, that input was gathered, and that the decision was made collaboratively. When you spoke up with a genuine concern in that meeting, you were not disrupting a discussion. You were disrupting a performance. And the performance needed your compliance, not your opinion. This looks like the meeting where you raised 3 valid concerns about the new initiative, and every single one was acknowledged, thanked, and then ignored because the budget had been approved 2 weeks before the meeting was even scheduled, and your concerns were structurally irrelevant to a process that needed your nodding, not your thinking. Your input was not rejected because it was wrong. It was irrelevant because the decision was already locked, and the meeting's institutional purpose was not to gather input, but to document consensus. When you spoke up, you were not adding to the conversation. You were adding friction to a process that needed to end with everyone nodding, and you were the only person in the room who did not know that. Here's the honest closing. Speaking up is not wrong. Speaking up without reading the room is expensive, and the cost gets charged to your credibility account, your reputation, and your institutional standing in ways that outlast the meeting by months. The fix is not to stop speaking up. The fix is to become strategic about where, when, and to whom your truth is delivered, because the same truth delivered privately to your manager before the meeting advances your career, while the same truth delivered publicly in front of leadership can permanently label you as difficult. Raise concerns privately before the meeting, not publicly during it. Frame challenges around risk reduction, not around what is wrong. Check whether the decision has already been made before spending credibility challenging it. Save your credibility capital for the battles that materially affect your career trajectory. And understand that the room remembers feelings, not facts. So manage the feeling your words create as carefully as you manage the content. Being right was never the problem. Being right without reading the room was. Speaking up strategically is a skill, and honesty without strategy has its own structural cost that most professionals never calculate until it has already been charged. I break down exactly why honesty at work has a tax and how to pay as little of it as possible in the next video. Being right was never the problem. Being right without reading the room was.